a parlar del futur de la ràdio de proximitat. Quins són els models cap on es pot encarar aquest futur i els condicionants tecnològics. Com tenim poc temps, el moderador no ho prendrà d'escoltar coses interessants, començant pel ponent i per la resta dels companys i companyes que estan aquí a la taula. El ponent serà Philippe Chapeau. Philippe Chapeau és una persona que conec fa anys, és cofundador de Red Tech International, però bàsicament és una persona que va començar creant un saló de la ràdio a París on s'hi trobaven milers de professionals de les grans ràdios i de les ràdios de proximitat, sobretot de les ràdios de proximitat, que és un moviment a França important, les ràdios associatives, les ràdios comercials petites, etc. I és una persona que, a més, ha impulsat una revista professional del sector, la Letra Pro de la ràdio, i el Podcast Magazine. És a dir, ell i el seu grup han estat persones que han estat contínuament en contacte, diríem, amb els canvis que es anaven vislumant, que es anaven albirant en el sector radiofònic francès i més enllà també de l'hexàgon. Una de les coses importants també és que en aquests moments fan un seguit de sessions que recorren tot França, acostant a les ràdios de proximitat i a les ràdios de territori el debat, la informació sobre la ràdio, sobre els canvis. I crec, per tant, que és un observador que ens pot aportar molt en aquesta ponència. Soyez bienvenue. Tu peux commencer comme tu veux. Tu vas parler en anglais, mais...
Hola. Works? Yeah, you hear me? Okay. Hola y gracias por esta maravillosa invitación para celebrar el centenario de la radio en España. En Francia, el centenario se celebra en 2021 con la creación de la Fête de la Radio, de la que soy responsable, entre otras cosas. Aunque tuve la suerte de tener una novia española cuando era joven, mi vocabulario no es lo suficientemente bueno para esta presentación en español. So I will take it in English, if you don't mind. Yes, it's okay? Presentation, you have it? Yes. So the future of local radio, models and technological constraints. So as Josep explained, that's 25 years I'm in the radio business. I was a tennis coach before, nothing to do with it. I have a podcast radio house, Connect On Air, Paris Radio Show, La Lettre pour la Radio, Radio Tour France, podcast magazine since 2019, and Red Tech Summit, which is a global publication for the 5 continents. And my goal is I am a global active watcher and link creator between radio, digital audio, and podcast actors and industry. So what is local radio? What is a local market? When you go and buy your salad or you go in a local market, you don't want to buy a salad that comes from Netherlands. You want to buy really a salad that is from the farmer that is next to you. So local radio is one thing, hyper-proximity. Hyper-proximity is something that is very important, and that is the core of radio, and that is what social network and all the new medias aren't able to do. And that's the only way for radio stations to go today. And you have a big chance when you're a local radio compared to musical stations. How many competitors do musical stations have today on Spotify or other platforms? So local radio, someone told me one day, and I really liked that, is not meant to be recorded. If you think about it, it's meant to be immediate. and or entertain. I was listening to the radio station just before saying that, entertainment, and immediate. And if you're not able to do that, then just put music. So instead of explaining to you a lot of things, what I thought is I was going to give you a take it or leave it to-do list if you're a local radio station today. All the things that I will talk to you about now is things that I've talked with all the actors of the industry since 25 years. I've followed local radio stations since the start. They helped us create the Paris radio show. It's local radio station. In France, we have 650 different local radio stations, 250 commercial radio stations, and then 25. Altogether, 1,200 stations. And we're one of the richest landscape in radio in the world, if we don't take all the pirate stations that Italy has, for instance. I guess there's maybe some in Spain, but I won't go on that. The idea is here to give you some ideas that really can make a difference if you're a local radio station. I don't want to just give you some things that are generic and that I will go really into the field and tell you what is the latest trends if you want to succeed being a local radio station. So it's the best sellers, okay? You agree or you don't agree, but you can take what you want and leave what you want. Take some risks, as no other stations are. How many real program directors do we have today that take risks in programming new talents? Not a lot, because they're blocked into a system where labels, music labels, are obliging you to pass some musics and not to really choose the one that you like and that you think your listeners will like. So take risk. Don't compare yourself with others. Don't try to do the same as the others, because that's usually kind of reassuring. It's nice to know that you're doing, or someone is doing that. Oh, we have to do the same. Please, don't do that. You're different, and you have to be different. Don't trust audience monitoring. I don't know how audience monitoring is in Spain, but in a lot of countries, I was talking to Radio Mirchi in India. They were believing into audience monitoring, as we do in the States, as we do in France, as we do, I guess, in Spain. You also have audience monitoring. And they did an experiment which was really fun. There's an oil, an oil that you use for your salad. We'll come back to the salad. And they wanted to make a test. They said, we want to have a 30 minutes advertising with only our name, just said for 30 minutes on air, saying the name of our oil, just like that. Our oil, our oil, our oil, our oil. Just to check if the audience monitoring will be different. And we want that for a month. They did that. They put the advertising on air and checked if the audience monitoring was different or not. If people just stopped listening that 30 minutes period of time. Every day it was 30 minutes of that advertising. Nothing changed. So they decided to stop believing in monitoring. And what they did, they said to their 55 presenters, they have 55 presenters with more than 1 million followers each. They have a reach of 35 million people every day. A few people in India, that's normal. And what they said to those guys, they said, well, now we don't, and to the brands, they say, we don't believe in audience, we just believe in what the people want to listen to. Your best audience monitoring is how much the phone rings, how much people you can gather in different external operations that you're doing on the field. avoid presenters that are more than 25 years of age. In France, the average presenter, the DJ, the host, is 55 years of age. I don't know how it is in Spain. In Germany, they start to have really young guys from TikTok and WhatsApp coming on in the radio stations. But in France, in my magazine, we just talked about that. A new guy came into a famous station, 56 years of age. Wow. And you want to bring new audience with guys that are 56 years old? I mean, I'm 53. I don't think I can really attract young people as a TikToker can do. If you want to bet for the future, of course. Attract youngster with podcast. When I mean youngster, it was a period in France where a lot of people were coming to stations, local stations, and knocked and say, "Hey, I want to make radio." It's not happening. I mean, that's maybe 10 years. No one is knocking at the door anymore of local radio stations. They don't want that because, of course, they're YouTuber. They have a lot of opportunities to make their own content. Podcast is something that attracts them. And you have great microphones, you have great studios, you got great infrastructure. They don't have that at the start. So, and give them envy. So you can attract them and let them try then when they make their own podcast in your studio. It doesn't matter if you're putting them on air or not. Attract them and tell them, hey, you want to feel how it is to be live? And they discover how thrilling it is to talk live to an audience, which they never experience with podcast or YouTube. They can do with YouTube if they're live, but then it's video, it's something else. If your DG presenter is boring, put good music instead. Don't be boring. If someone is boring, tell him. Because your listener, they will stop listening, even if you talk about something local. Can't be boring. Get your DG host presenter be intimate, concerning, and never boring. And that's what podcasters are good at. We launched Podcast Magazine in France, 2019. The idea was to say, where are those people coming from? Because when you're in the radio business, you know the schools that are making presenters, you know the journalist schools, and you know it's the way we do usually. But 90% of the podcasters are coming from somewhere else. They're butchers. They have passions and they don't know anything about it and they want to learn. And they use their phone at the beginning, and then they buy a USB microphone, and then they buy the latest great Shure microphone, and then become better than you. 10 years later, we have podcasters in France that are stronger than TF1, the first TV channel. Hugo Décrypte is one of the best today TV channel, 250 million views per month. So, and he started not a long time ago. And he was not that good at the start. So all the podcasters there that starts, we don't know where they come from, but you have a resource that is incredible for local radio stations. And podcasters are looking to radio stations, and radio stations are looking to podcasters, and they don't talk. We're from the same family. Tell stories, not news. We come back to the Indian guy. The Indian guy said, we stopped promoting radio. We said we want our host to tell stories. So what they start with is a hashtag on the social network with the presenter. They say, you start your story with a hashtag. And then you ask all your followers, and they have more than 1 million each, to come at 9:30 to the radio station, listen to the radio station, and go on with your story. So if you didn't look at the hashtag, you don't understand what happens in the radio station. And then after the radio station, during the live of the radio station, you go on your story and you tell them, hey, come at the mall and we'll meet, because there's a book I want there's a book and an author I want to present you. And people are just gathering like hell. And it's crazy in India what happens with people that just tell stories during a day. And each day they have a new story. It's intimate. Make slow radio. You will not be better than radio station that have 15 journalists. Don't try to do the same as they do. You won't manage. A local radio station can't beat the public radio station with information. But what you can do is something happens in your city, and you know the guy that instead of okay, you can say what happened. There's a fire. Something happened in the fire, big fire in a big church, like, okay, you can announce that. Every station, every TV will do that. But what is important is what happens after. And you can do that. You can go on a week later, come back. The week after, come back and go on making slow information. Because that's what the listeners want to know. They don't want to know that it's horribly burned. They want to know what happened after. Because when they go in the city, when they watch the church, they always ask each other, hey, do you know what happens? Do you know who did that? Where? And that's the role of local radio station, doing slow radio instead of doing immediate news. Don't look for the perfect radio voice. Who are you to say that this voice is a radio voice? Maybe it's someone that talks very bad Spanish, have a voice that you really don't like. But if the listeners like it, why? Why telling him you don't have a radio voice? That's the old-fashioned. Get out of that. Radio Mirchi did that as well. They just stopped. They took a girl. She makes a lot of mistakes when she talks Indian, and she swears a bit, and she has a voice sound like a casserole. I don't know how you say casserole in Spanish. When you make sounds bad. They took her out of the station. It was such a revolution that they were obliged to put her back. Since then, they decided to say, we're no one to decide if it's a good voice or not. It's the listeners that will decide. Don't look for look for what listeners like. Who are you to say that this voice is the right one? Get talents that sound different. We don't want to have people that sounds like a journalist that sound like a journalist. What's the fun with it? Do you think you're listening to a podcast because this podcast is listening the same way as all the podcasts? No. And don't look for a perfect soldier that comes from the best school of journalism. Sorry, but the school of journalism, they're old-fashioned as well. Most famous people started in local radio. You are whipping the slate clean. That means that, presenter that comes to local radio station don't have experience, and you give them that experience. And that's fine, because that's what it's meant to be. And most of the presenters in TV, in radio, and famous actors, famous musicians, started in radio, in local radio station. And that's fine. So let them go if they want to go after. You are here to create talents, not to keep them. Be curious, look around you, in the bus, in the street, to see what people consume, how and when. Who is doing that? Who is, from a radio station, curious and go in the bus and looks on all screens what they look at, what they're doing, what they listen to, what they watch. I mean, that's really great information we have around us. And that's replacing the audience monitoring. You're doing your own audience monitoring this way. Earning money is not a swear word. A local radio station is a company. We have for a long time with all the syndication of local radio station talking about money was, no, we don't make money, we have subsidiaries. No, money is a bad word. No, money is not a bad word. Every community station needs to get money to pay for everything. We need to pay for that. So if you don't think as a company, the problem is that once you don't have those subsidiaries anymore, how will you do? Find alternatives. Make a website for mobile. Stop believing that people are on browsers anymore. I mean, they're on mobile. 85% of consumption is on mobile. So make your website and think that your website is your master master media. You need to have one media where you gather all the information and the data, and that's the next step. You need a website, and you need to get the data from your listeners. Look at what in Belgium, in Switzerland, in France now. You cannot really listen to a podcast or to a radio station if you don't register. If you don't put your name, your surname, and then it's free then, and then your email, your age. Get those data because the data are very important for you. It's not because we have our RGPD, you have to respect that for sure, but it's still important to know who is listening to you and to get those data from you, not from YouTube. YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, you don't get the data at all. You give the data away to those platforms. Keep Hertzian as backbone. It's free, anonymous, and sent to all of and it's sent to all at the same time. Hertzian is the backbone of radio. Don't drop it. Of course, if you're only a web radio, it can work as well. But if you manage to keep the backbone, it's really the best way to broadcast to everyone the same signal. And go DAB+, but maybe check or wait for small-scale DAB. I know that Spain is not really in DAB yet a lot, but it should be, because every European country now, in France, we're really into DAB+. And what happened in France is that a lot of local radio stations are having a lot of troubles financially because the state asked them to go to DAB+. And we have double diffusion, which means that you pay the FM and you pay the DAB+. Switzerland just decided to switch off, public service decided to switch off end of this year, and private radio stations soon, and that's a good decision. In France, they just wait and wait and wait and wait and wait, and radio station and local radio station have really, really big troubles financially. Which means that you can go there, but there's also a solution that now UK is really using. It's really local, small multiplexes that don't cost a lot, 50 euros per month to broadcast on DAB. So it's really, really cheap with open source. So that will be my advice. Take it or leave it. Thank you very much.